Here's the shocking part first. Some of the most capable, high IQ engineers in the industry, people who could outcode almost anyone in the room, walk away from programming entirely. Not because they failed, not because they couldn't keep up. In many documented cases, it's the opposite. The better they got, the more likely they were to quit. That single, counterintuitive pattern is what we're breaking down today. Because the reason isn't burnout in the way most people assume, and it isn't boredom either. It's something stranger, and once you see it, you'll notice it everywhere in high skill professions. Let's start with the reveal. Researchers studying attrition in technical fields have found that raw intelligence and technical skill are, at best, weakly correlated with how long someone stays in a demanding profession. In some studies, the correlation runs the other way. The strongest predictor of who leaves isn't ability. It's something psychologists call the competence-boredom trap. And once you understand what that actually means, the whole pattern stops being a mystery. Think of skill acquisition like a treadmill. When you're a beginner, the treadmill runs fast and unpredictable. Every problem is new, every bug feels like a genuine mystery, and your brain is fully engaged just keeping up. That difficulty is uncomfortable, but it's also what makes early career programming feel alive. As you get better, something happens that nobody warns you about. The treadmill slows down. The problems that used to take real effort start solving themselves almost automatically. The same pattern recognition we talked about with chess grandmasters and expert coders. Except this time, that efficiency isn't just a superpower, it's also quietly removing the thing that made the work engaging in the first place. Psychologists have a simple way of picturing why this matters. Think of your brain's engagement level like a thermostat with two danger zones. Too much difficulty relative to your skill, and you get anxiety, overwhelm, burnout. Too little difficulty relative to your skill, and you get something psychologists call flow deprivation. A state that looks a lot like boredom from the outside, but feels more like quiet suffocation from the inside. Most conversations about burnout focus entirely on the first zone. Too much pressure. Almost nobody talks about the second zone, and it turns out that's exactly where a huge number of highly skilled programmers end up. Here's where the research gets specific. A well-known 2014 study on flow states led by psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's framework and later applied directly to technical workers found that peak engagement happens in a narrow band when the challenge of a task is closely matched to a person's skill level. Fall below that band and motivation drops fast, even among people who genuinely love the underlying subject. This isn't laziness. It's a mismatch between what the brain is built to seek and what the job is actually providing. Now apply that to a career trajectory. A junior developer's daily challenge level is high relative to their skill. Plenty of engagement, plenty of flow. A senior developer, especially one working on a mature, stable code base, faces daily tasks that are often well below their now much higher skill ceiling. Reviewing the same category of pull request for the 5th year in a row. Fixing a bug they've mentally already solved before they finish reading the ticket. The technical demand hasn't changed much. Their skill has grown far past it. The gap between the two isn't comfort. It's a slow leak. This is where the myth-busting twist comes in because most people assume the fix for this is simple. Just give smart people harder problems. Companies try this constantly, promoting their best engineers into more complex, high-stakes projects, assuming difficulty alone solves the boredom. Sometimes it works, but researchers studying expert disengagement have found something the simple fix misses entirely. Difficulty and meaning are not the same axis. You can hand someone an extremely difficult, technically demanding problem that still feels hollow if it isn't connected to something they find personally significant. A brilliant engineer optimizing an internal dashboard nobody outside the company will ever see can be simultaneously intellectually challenged and completely disengaged because difficulty was solved while meaning was ignored. There's a useful way to picture this. Think of motivation like a car with two separate fuel tanks, a challenge tank and a meaning tank. Most workplaces obsess over refilling the challenge tank. Harder projects, bigger scope, more responsibility, while completely forgetting the second tank exists. A car can have a full challenge tank and an empty meaning tank and still stall out on the highway. That's precisely the profile researchers keep finding in programmers who quit at the peak of their skill, not under-challenged, under-meaninged. So why does this specifically hit smart, skilled programmers harder than average performers? Here's the part almost nobody talks about, and it connects directly to something we've covered before. Expertise compression. Remember how a grandmaster doesn't see 32 individual chess pieces? They see a handful of recognizable patterns. Remember how an experienced developer doesn't read code line by line, they recognize entire structures instantly. That compression is what makes expertise powerful. It's also exactly what accelerates flow deprivation. A highly skilled programmer's brain compresses problems faster than their environment can generate new ones. Their pattern library grows faster than their job's actual complexity, which means the more genuinely talented someone is, the faster they run out of novel challenge inside a fixed role, and the sooner that quiet suffocation sets in. This also explains a pattern that confuses a lot of managers. Why does the best engineer on the team, the one who solves problems fastest and helps everyone else, sometimes hand in their resignation with seemingly no warning? From the manager's side, that person looked fine. High output, no complaints, no visible stress. But high output was never the signal to watch. A brain that has fully compressed its current environment can keep performing at a high level for a long time on autopilot, right up until it quietly decides the autopilot isn't worth continuing. Here's the honest, more complicated truth underneath all of this, because the research doesn't say every smart person who quits was disengaged, and it would be dishonest to imply that. Plenty of skilled programmers leave for completely unrelated reasons: better pay elsewhere, family circumstances, a genuine new passion. The flow deprivation pattern doesn't explain every departure. What it does explain is a very specific, recurring type of resignation researchers keep finding when they interview departing senior engineers directly. Not, "I couldn't handle it." Almost the opposite. "I got too good at it and nothing here needed me to keep growing." So, what actually fixes this for the people living through it or the companies trying to keep their best people? The research points somewhere useful. It's not simply give them harder work, and it's not simply give them more meaning either, since both tanks need attention independently. Some of the highest retention technical teams researchers have studied deliberately build in what's sometimes called a challenge ladder, a structured way for someone's problems to keep growing in difficulty roughly as fast as their skill does, paired with genuine input into which problems actually matter to them personally. Neither piece alone solves it. The latter, without meaning, just produces a harder, equally hollow treadmill, meaning without a ladder just produces a comfortable, eventually stagnant one. So here's the truth all of this points to. Smart people don't usually quit programming because it got too hard. They quit because it quietly stopped growing with them, and somewhere along the way, nobody noticed the two separate fuel tanks running dry at different times. The engineer who seems the most competent, the calmest, the least likely to leave, might actually be the closest to walking out the door because competence was never the thing keeping them there. Growth was. And once growth stops, competence just becomes a very efficient way of doing something that no longer means anything. If you're in a technical career right now, here's a simple gut check worth running on yourself honestly. Are you still being challenged in a way that actually stretches you, or are you just executing a pattern library you finished building years ago? And separately, does the work still connect to something you personally care about, or has it quietly become something you're just very good at? Are you someone who's felt this exact thing? Brilliant at your job, quietly bored out of your mind? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to read your stories.